How can you take something as tragic as the experience of multiple pregnancy losses and transform that trauma into a movement to help women in similar circumstances build resilience and hope? Let's talk all about it with Rachell Dumas, registered nurse, entrepreneur, maternal health advocate, and founder of the nonprofit A Light After 9, right here on episode 498 of The Nurse Keith Show. And as I said today, we're here with Rachell Dumas. She is the founder of the nonprofit A Light After 9, and we'll get into what that means shortly. And Rachell, I'm so excited to have you here. And my first question for you is this. What are the statistics that are published out there in the world about the rate of pregnancy loss among women in the United States? Is it as common as I think it might be?
Well, it depends on how common you think it is. And thank you for having me, Keith. The numbers are startling, actually. March of Dimes just even released their report of just how horrible the United States is doing as far as pregnancy disparities, specifically preterm birth. But they also released some statistics regarding pregnancy loss. And according to them, 10 to 20% of known pregnancies. So 10 to 20 out of every 100 known pregnancies end in miscarriage. What's even more startling, that is a lot of research is suggesting that 30% of pregnancies end in miscarriage before a person even knows that they're pregnant.
Wow. So it is super prevalent. And that's kind of where my mind was going in terms of those kinds of numbers, but it's very stark to hear it. Like when you see or hear those numbers, that is really startling.
Yes.
And I'm curious, what about the statistics for women who are undergoing, IVF or other types of fertility treatment? What do you see in that respect?
So those pregnancy losses, and typically, if not most times, they're tested and we know those who are going through IVF treatment know if they're experiencing a loss by testing. It's just part of the treatment. And it's even greater for known pregnancies that where IVF is used, and that's 22 to 31%, as certain research suggests. So
oh my gosh,
it's pretty high even then, even known. It's so many mixed statistics because of the fact that we don't always know when we're pregnant because the losses are so early.
Right. I'm curious for you to share with the listeners, where does your story begin in this regard? Like what led you down this path, and why is this such a mission of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a pretty traumatic pregnancy experience, unfortunately, and I couldn't anticipate it being as bad as it was. So my pregnancy journey started in 2018. I had an unplanned pregnancy with my soon-to-be husband at the time, and I started bleeding, went to the OBGYN. He told me that I was miscarrying, and he also told me that I would go on to have healthy pregnancy and that this is just a part of the journey. And I'm a registered nurse, but at the time I was a trauma nurse. So I knew very, very little about maternal health, to say the least. So I blindly believed him. I didn't do any further research. I didn't advocate for myself. I just went on with my life thinking, okay, well, when I really do want to get pregnant, it'll be fine and I'll have a baby. But that was so far from the truth, and nothing could prepare me for that journey. So I started to plan my pregnancy journey. So I thought I was planning in 2020, which is when I got pregnant again. And I found out that I was having twins this time around. I was terrified, not because of the miscarriage, but because I couldn't imagine having two babies, but I was still excited nonetheless. So I went to the doctor because I had a lot of pain, a lot of issues during that pregnancy, and I ended up losing the first twin at about 13 weeks. All of my symptoms resolved. I was comfortable enough to allow my friends to throw a gender reveal party. And during that party, I went to the bathroom, used the bathroom, and that baby fell out.
Oh my gosh. During the party.
During the party. I remember being in the bathroom just wailing, and the music was so loud, nobody knew what was going on. Just wailing. And
My
I thought
gosh.
immediately back to that moment in 2018 when that doctor told me everything would be fine.
Hmm.
So it was at that moment I realized something's wrong with me. This isn't normal. This isn't what I expected or what he said it would be. Something is wrong. After I went to the ER and passed the rest of the baby and got treatment, the emergent treatment, I did follow up with the OBGYN and was diagnosed with cervical insufficiency, which is when your cervix is too weak to carry a baby full term. So once the baby gets heavy enough, they will fall out,
Hmm.
for lack of better words. So the treatment to that is what's called a cervical cerclage, which is a suture around the cervix to keep it closed throughout the whole pregnancy so you can carry a baby. So I saw my OB, I saw a reproductive endocrinologist to do further testing to make sure there was no other issues causing miscarriages. I saw a reproductive geneticist to make sure there was no genetic component to the miscarriages. And I tried again. I had some early losses, start on some hormones, and then I was able to carry the baby through the first trimester to the point where I can finally get the cerclage placed to carry the baby. My first pregnancy where I made it to the second trimester again happened in 2021. I made it to 13 weeks, went to get the procedure done. And at my 20-week appointment, despite of the doctor telling me that if the cerclage failed, you would definitely feel it. It would be very painful. I didn't feel anything. And at that 20-week appointment, she said the cerclage failed. The baby is pretty much coming out. You can go ahead and deliver the baby.
Hmm.
And I said, want the baby passed? She said, yes, very nonchalantly. So I said, you know what? I'm going to fight for this baby. We're at 20 weeks. It's the longest I've been pregnant. So I had all of my village call around to see who would put in another cerclage above that cerclage, push the baby back in, and to save their pregnancy. I found a doctor in Dallas who called me immediately, said, if you can fly here, we're going to do everything we can. He saved multiple pregnancies like that before, and I was pretty, hopeful that he would save mine. I flew to Dallas, got the cerclage placed. That 3-hour surgery took 8 hours. But I woke up from anesthesia to a bunch of healthcare providers surrounding me, cheering me on that we were still pregnant and that everything went well. Unfortunately, after anesthesia wore off, I started to have contractions and I labored for 30 hours despite of all of the medications that they gave me. Eventually, my water broke and I had to go back to the OR, take out the cerclages, and give birth to a 21-weeker. And that baby passed. Very depressing time in my life, filled with anxiety. The silver lining is that that doctor promised me that if that was to happen, he would fly me back out himself, complete the surgery outside of pregnancy, and that he would make sure he did everything that he could to get me my baby. And true to his word, that November, he flew me back out and did the surgery. I had a couple of early miscarriages after that, but May 2020, May 2021, I was pregnant. I made it past the first trimester, the second trimester, and I made it past the third. And I finally got my baby Nazir on 12/30/2022. I had my baby boy.
Wow. That is such a story. And how old is he now? He's going to be 2 years old this
He
year.
will be 2 on 12/30.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of your journey, what, you know, emotional steps, practical steps, what did you have to do? And what did you find most effective for your own healing? Because you had trauma after trauma and loss after loss. What did you do to just to move through this process, which was ongoing for a number of years?
Yeah, I mean, this was 4 years. And, that's for the pregnancy journey itself. We're not counting the aftermath because last year was rough. I'm like, you know, what did I go through? I'm still in disbelief every time I tell this story. It's like, what just happened to me? But I will say that I've been in therapy every week for the most part, give or take some weeks, with an amazing therapist, Dr. Johnson. But during my pregnancy journey, towards the end where I feel like it mattered a lot, where I finally had that surgery done, And I had to try again. I had to make it to the second trimester to see if it worked because that was the final step to, seeing if I would be a mother naturally. I got to a point where I just couldn't move forward getting pregnant anymore. I had at that point, 8 losses, 9 losses. And I looked, I talked to my therapist first, and she told me about hypnotherapy. And I tried it, and it was phenomenal. Somehow she made me feel comfortable again with trying to get pregnant and trying to conceive. So talk therapy, hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. It was a lot of therapy that helped me through this process, a lot of trauma work, a lot of grief work,
Hmm.
because there were a lot of loss. And if I can go back in time and if I can encourage anybody else going through this process or want to start the pregnancy process, I would say start therapy initially before conception, because you don't know how this process is going to go or end.
That's really good advice. And I'm sure your organization, I'm sure that's part of the message that
Mm-hmm.
you deliver to women who need to hear it.
Yes.
There are a lot of misconceptions around pregnancy loss. And I'm wondering, what are some of the common ones that you came across personally and that I'm sure you support women in addressing because they come up? And what do you do about those misconceptions, and how do you deal with those when they crop up either from family, friends, probably
Mm-hmm.
total strangers have misconceptions too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it wouldn't happen to you. Even myself, I went into this journey, even after the first loss, ironically, I went into this journey thinking that I would conceive with no issue, I would carry a baby with no issue, and I would deliver with no issue. And truth be told, the only part that was somewhat smooth for me was the actual delivery. And I just went in so blindly and just so unprepared emotionally and, physically. So I want couples, women, birthers to really think about all scenarios, as many as possible when you're starting this journey, and try to prepare yourself. Sometimes you can't prepare yourself for the grief that comes after a loss. You just can't, but at least prepare yourself for what could happen. Another misconception is that if you have a miscarriage, you can have more. Another misconception is that if you have a miscarriage, you won't be able to deliver a baby safely too. You can have more miscarriages, but that's not always the case for everybody. You're at higher risk of having a miscarriage, but it's not always the case. So those women who have a miscarriage, or those birthers who have a miscarriage and don't want to try again because they don't want to have another one, that's completely understandable, but that's not always the case. And then on the side of family and friends and those who are trying to navigate loss with the person who is physically undergoing that loss, we have a common misconception that we don't want to talk about it. But you should really ask that person, are they comfortable? You should ask that person, what do they need? I think a lot of times significant others and families feel powerless when there's a loss going on or that happened, and we don't know how to approach that person, and we make these assumptions about what they need or don't need. But sometimes we need that safe space to just vent and talk about it. So be that for that person if you can.
Mm. If you could just very briefly before we take a break, just tell us, when did the so well, forgive me, but when did the light bulb go off that a light after nine needed to come into fruition? Like, when did that happen for you? It was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something, and I'm going to do something big.
Yeah, so that happened during my year of rest,
Hmm.
which was 2023. So I had my baby on 12/30, which was, second to last day of the year. So I took all of 2023, which I was calling my Renaissance year, to just get back to myself and just rest and
Okay.
recuperate. And during that time and all the way until the beginning of this year, I was just like, I don't want anybody to go through this. I think I've had enough losses for the world at this point. Of course, we're still having a lot of loss, but I'm in a great position, experience wise, credentially, speaking, and definitely passion related to start this organization. I know the tools we need. I know the specialists that are needed, the resources that are needed, and I am not new to entrepreneurship. I have another business that I started, so I immediately was able to jumpstart this nonprofit. So that's what I did.
That's fantastic. And when was A Light After Nine founded?
Yes, it was actually founded on my birthday this year, August 20th. Is when I really started all the work. And it's just been up from there. It's just been a very fast-paced movement with a lot of receptiveness from the nursing community, from women and families, and just from a lot of organizations as well in the maternal health arena.
That's amazing. When you formed A Light After Nine and it became a nonprofit, you wanted to provide support for women facing pregnancy loss.
Absolutely.
And you wanted to create a safety net in a sense, right?
Right.
So we can see where the name A Light After Nine came from, right? You had 9 losses. And
Yes.
so that makes a ton of sense. So where did you begin? Like, you're forming a nonprofit, you want to reach women. So how do you do that? Like, where do you begin? What are the building blocks to create an organization like you've created?
Well, first you have to decide that you're going to do it. The first step is really just saying, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it my all. I know the issue and I know where I can help at, and I can't do it alone. So after filing my articles and applying for the 401c and, all the basic business things, like I said, you can't do this alone. The maternal health disparities in this country are just so insane. It takes a group of us. So I immediately reached out to different companies to partner. March of Dimes, Lamaze, Healthy Mom, Healthy Babies. I mean, I could go on, Doula Bean, all of these maternal health companies who are just phenomenal and have been doing so many great things in the space. So I was able to talk to them, pick their brains, talk about collaboration and partnership, and see where I could fit in this train already in motion. And then I had to create my online presence, which I did on all social media, and making sure I'm also putting my name out there because we want to help these women and families. So I'm making sure I'm getting on podcasts like yours. I've been speaking to CNN and NPR and other media outlets that I previously used with my other business that was able to help me gain momentum and get my name out there so I can make that difference. So it's been a roller coaster, but it's been my greatest ride so far.
Wow. So I'm curious, now that it all exists, now that you're out there speaking, you're supporting women, what does it actually look like, boots on the ground? So you're providing support for women facing pregnancy loss. What does the organization provide, and how do you provide it? Like, is it all you, or are you bringing in other people? Like, what's the structure?
I'm definitely bringing other people. Like I said, I can't do this alone. Aside from partnering, the company is just so much. Not only am I an entrepreneur with 2 companies, I'm also finishing my master's and starting my doctorate next year. And I have a baby. My Light After Nine is still running around here, almost 2 years old. So it's a lot. So I definitely brought in interns and definitely brought in someone with marketing, outreach, and procurement. So it's not just me. That's impossible. So boots on the ground, we're helping women, birthers, families, because like I said, it takes a village. A lot of times it's more than just the person giving birth. And then sometimes, unfortunately, it is just one person. And I hate that, but we're here to help. So we really get to the bottom of what their needs are, whether it's grants, because this process is expensive. I still have medical bills that have lasted long past my pregnancy journey, unfortunately, whether it ends in loss or a baby. it's expensive. We make sure that they have the specialists that they need. So they won't fly to Dallas to try to save a pregnancy, that they can have access to the specialists they need close by. And that's not always the case because there are a lot of what's called access deserts where women are or birthers are 2 or 3 hours away from the specialists that they need, which is very unfortunate because if you are a high risk mom like I am, that can be your life on the line or your baby's life on the line. So we help with that as much as possible. And then this whole journey can be traumatic. And even if you have a smooth pregnancy, it's just a lot on the body and the mind. So we make sure we provide mental health resources. One of the biggest things I love to do is education. I need you to advocate for yourself because I am not in the clinic with you. But I will tell you what to say if this comes up, or if you have questions. I will encourage you to ask those questions. You should leave that clinic and that appointment feeling confident knowing your treatment plan. So we do a lot. We have a comprehensive program to help them through this process.
So are there support groups and online resources, and do people meet face to face, or is a lot of it done virtually?
Yeah, it's all done virtually, whether it's a telephone call or face to face, depending on what their preference is. A lot of times they like a telephone call. I will tell you that this journey it takes a lot out of you. So we make it easy, whether it's an email even. I don't want I don't want to put too much pressure on the person regarding how they're reaching out. I want to meet them where they are.
Right. And so you have resources around mental health and around how to find the care that they need.
Yes.
And then what about personal strategies? Like do women associated with your organization, do they mentor other women in terms of sharing, like, this is what worked for me, or here's what I tried? How do they make that connection and make sure, you can share the plethora of things that someone can do to support themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm already doing this when I'm talking to our members and our patients, which is the mentorship or the momtorship, I like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
From mom to mom, it's such a different conversation when you've been through loss and you're going through the process than it is from talking to a therapist or talking to your doctor, which of course we need all of us. We need a full interdisciplinary team for a pregnancy journey. But I love to make sure I'm actively sharing my story, which, like we talked about earlier, is taboo still for many women and just uncomfortable conversation to have. So we're definitely doing the mentorship, and we're making sure that you're comfortable with your process and that you're able to have a safe space to talk about your losses.
That's really wonderful. And when we first started our conversation half an hour ago or so, we were talking about statistics, and you shared the stats about pregnancy loss. And then you also shared the extra stats about women undergoing fertility treatment and IVF and their stats in terms of their losses. So do you have a special approach or special resources for women who are on that fertility journey? Because we know a lot of women are undergoing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're partnering with organizations who specifically target women and families and birthers who are going through the IVF journey, and that list is growing and those partnerships are growing. So we're making sure that we're directing them to those resources and making sure their needs are specifically met. Also, we do a lot of recommendations for different apps as well, and IVF related grants. There are a lot out there, and a lot of women don't even know, a lot of families don't even know about them. And we want to put it in front of them because it's, like I said earlier, so much to do all this research while you're pregnant. That's the last thing you want to do is extra research and extra steps. So we're making sure that, hey, do you know about this grant? It's about to close in 2 weeks. You need help applying? We'll help you apply. Do you know about this one? You can use this one. So we make sure we take that guesswork out of them for those who are undergoing IVF treatment as well.
That's amazing. And I know you're partnering with the March of Dimes, and you're speaking at their conference in 2026, which is super exciting. So how are you working with March of Dimes? And I know they're a big organization. They've been around a long time. So what's their interface with you around pregnancy loss? Because I know they do a lot of things.
Yeah, so I actually met with them quite a few weeks ago, and there is a local chapter and a liaison that I spoke with specifically who is just extremely involved in all things maternal health in Georgia, and she gave me full support for future endeavors that I want to do. One of them is a conference that I am putting together with a doula organization called Doula Bean, and it's gonna be just this great birther expo that we're doing. I'm so excited about it. We're still in the early talks of it and everything, but it's gonna be phenomenal, and I hope to work with Marchadons for things like that. It's so many different things that I want to do, and I'm so glad that I have that support and that contact. So it's a lot coming in the future.
That's exciting. Where do you see A Light After Nine going in the next few years? What do you want to see your organization do?
So our overarching goal is to decrease maternal health disparities. That's preterm birth. That's definitely the maternal death rate, and definitely amongst, well, all races, but specifically amongst Black women,
Mm-hmm.
it's significantly higher than our counterparts. And there is no time where we should be fearful for our lives while bringing in a life. That should not be, especially in 2024. We should not
Yes.
be fighting that battle still. We shouldn't. We just shouldn't. And it's already such a vulnerable time. And God forbid you had losses. Now I have to worry about my own life. It's just I could go on and on about that, but it's already traumatic to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So I see Light After Nine really innovating the way maternal trauma care is approached. And I have this urge, and it's my life work at this point to get at into the hospital at the bedside to start it there. There is something that a specialty that we don't use often in maternal care at all, and that's palliative care.
Hmm.
Why don't we order palliative care for our maternal health patients? And from talking to palliative care professionals and other just healthcare professionals who have tried it, I recently had a conversation with uh, Hope for Georgia Moms, and they were saying they tried that, but the palliative care workers don't have that maternal care expertise. So a new specialty has to be created with that combination. And we should start that hand holding and making that journey as comfortable as possible, starting at the bedside and then thereafter with case management. Because we need it from the bedside and then thereafter into the next pregnancy and thereafter. So I see a
Wow.
light after nine. That is what we ultimately want to do. And then because a lot of maternal health issues happen at home or away from the hospital, because we're not in the hospital 24/7, hopefully, we need to make this an employer benefit.
Hmm.
When most birthers work, we spend 80%
Yes.
of our lives at work. And then when issues like this and events like this happen, we're lost. Even as a healthcare professional, I was lost. And I could only imagine somebody who has no healthcare background going through this situation. So I want to be a healthcare benefit where they can access it through their employer, give us a call and say, this is what's going on. We can triage them. We can find resources. We can give them emotional support. We could give them grants. We can be that, like I said, one-stop shop for them and hopefully put a dent in the maternal health disparities.
Wow. I mean, your vision is huge, but I can see that you're the kind of person who can bring visions to fruition. And I
Thank
know
you.
it's not easy. I know it's an uphill climb and a heavy lift, but if anyone can do it, you can. So I can't wait to see how it develops. I can't wait to have you back to talk about how things
Thank you.
continue to grow. And or Rachell, I want people to go to A Light After Nine. And can you tell us the website?
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.alighafter9.org.
Okay. And is nine spelled out the word Nine?
It's
Okay.
NINE.org. Yep.
Okay, alightafter9.org, and there we'll find the links to all your social media. We'll have all
Absolutely.
the links in the show notes for people to find. Please check out A Light After Nine, make some donations, get involved. Please let Rachell know that you heard her here on the show. And Rachell, thank you so much. You are an amazing human being. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for serving so many people in the world and doing such good work. I can't wait to have you back. And I thank you for being my new friend and colleague.
Thank you for being mine, Keith. Thank you for having me here and having me share my story. And those questions were amazing. I'm so grateful to be on your podcast.